guys, mics up, ready for the Valentine.
Microphones, look at that. Oh,
Mics up. She is like. Good morning, Lagos, and thanks a lot for staying tuned here on Smooth 98.1. It's a happy day, happy Thursday, we call it here on Smooth Breakfast with Ayo Myro Essay.
And Valentine Ohu.
If you're not, you're going to say something.
Yeah, happy World Radio Day.
Oh yeah, happy World.
yeah.
That's what one of the reasons why we're so excited. It's officially our day. So Lagos, thank you so much for being such a fantastic part of the journey. And if you're not smiling yet, we hope that you'll be smiling with our introduction. All right, we have our guest with us in the studio. Good morning, Adenike.
Good morning, everyone.
And like I like to call you, barrister. No, not barrister, broadcaster, Adenike. Good morning and welcome. Adenike is Adenike Oyetunde on Twitter. And of course, I have the one and only barrister, Fumi Odude. Morning, Fumi.
Good morning, broadcaster.
And I have D. Mr. C, lawyer D. Mr. C. Yeah, barrister. Yes. Morning.
Interesting.
Good morning, Ayo Valentine. Good morning, Fumi. Good morning, Adenike. Good morning, Tony, listening out for this show. And good morning, Lagos.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. We did promise you a happy show. Despite what's going on in the news, we still want to keep hope alive. All right, we get straight into our stories. But before then, this is how you can get in touch with us. Send us a message. On WhatsApp, it's 0809 444 0981. On Twitter, it's at smooth981fm. Kindly use the hashtag freshlypress901 to send us your message. And on YouTube, we're actually streaming live, smooth981fm Lagos. When you go on there, there's a live chat option to send your message. We'll try to get through as many as possible.
All right. Thank you very much, Ayo. Let's start with this first story. This one is from the Punch newspaper. National Assembly wants arms bearing force over security affairs. They said they claim that they see strange faces around the National Assembly, beating security checks. They see that the presence of those unidentified individuals pose a danger to their lives. But your thoughts on this, Adenike?
Okay, so the clerk to the National Assembly, Mohammed Sani Omolori, recommended the arms-bearing elite force to be established for the National Assembly, and they say that this is because, unfortunately, strange faces claim to be some lawmakers' constituents, and they thereby beat security checks, excuse me, and endangering lives. Now, I've never been to the White House, at least not yet.
Not yet.
But we watch so many movies. We see what happens at the Capitol, and we see that without a doubt, there are just certain things that will never happen. One of which is security checks. One of our biggest problems or challenges in this country is big manism. Do you know who I am? I came to see, I did this. Reality is that if it is your job to check every single human being, we must make it a habit, and we must instill that law that every single person who wants to gain access into the National Assembly be checked. Where the National Assembly is located is called the 3-arm zone in Abuja, and it has many other important offices there. Of particular interest to me in this was when they were talking about how banking activities are around that location, and they may have to stop it because if some people are claiming that they're trying to gain access, you realize that the banking halls are not on the way to the National Assembly per se. They are in the same vicinity. So you wonder, why would people say they want to gain access to the banking halls or the banks and then want to claim they're going through the national? It just doesn't make any sense. So a 12-man committee headed by the Sergeant at Arms, Brigadier General Mohammed Danwalis, retired, recommended that banks and other business outfits whose operations were neither incidental nor complementary to the functions of the National Assembly be rationalized. And they have also recommended that the leadership of the Senate and the House of Representatives prevail on legislators to submit themselves to security checks, especially at the entry of the national. So it's not just the so-called constituents, even the legislators themselves. oh, don't you know who I am? You see the number plate. And there's something about driving SUV in this country. If you don't have SUV, you raise your hand in the air. You realize that if you have a saloon car, oh, but what are you looking for? Where are you there? Why are you?
Yeah.
But when they see the SUV, oh, there's this air. So
And there's a bigger air or a more pungent air when you cover your number plate.
absolutely, that rubbish that people do. So the reality is, you're a legislator, you're a constituent. Once you want to get access into the National Assembly, to be honest, the National Assembly is such a hot spot for anything. Danger, bombings, whatever it is. So we must allow ourselves be subject to checks. And I'm hoping that the cuts across not just the National Assembly, everywhere.
Yeah.
We don't want to be checked. We don't want people to tell us where to park, even when they have designated parkings and all of that stuff. So fingers crossed, let's see how this goes. But the panel has been set up, and they're saying that based on information, there is the likelihood that the National Assembly will be targeted. So
I think it's time for them to be telling themselves the truth. And I like the point you made as to humanism and how people just put themselves in that position of just pretend to be what they are not. Because if anybody just wears agbada and carries SUV, like you said, they look at him as a big man. And if them within themselves do not submit themselves to these checks, and then they can't excuse another person that looks closely.
It's even insufficient if you have identity cards, because people who want to perpetrate wrongdoings will just get whatever looks, and because we can't authenticate at that point if your identity card is real, you just clip it and you just go. No, you must submit yourself to the security check.
Thank you very much.
Sean says the lawmakers are welcome to the real world. Do they know how many strange faces speaking strange sounding languages we come across every day as regular Nigerians? They should work on fixing the system and checking the insecurity the entire nation faces, and they'll be safe as well. That's from WhatsApp.
Thank you. The next story for you, Mr. C, I'd like you to take a look at this privatization of refineries that seems to be nipped in the bud. The BP is like, I was going to use the word a lot. Well, a lot of people have actually been calling for privatization of refineries as a way to boost production. Look, you will know that as it stands, 4 refineries combined produce 445,000 barrels per day. But what do you think is the reason why they are declining the move to privatize, and if it's in any way has any merits? Do you think it's going to go far?
Okay, so yesterday the BP listed the assets the federal government plans to sell in 2020. Incidentally, the refineries were not listed as part of those assets, and the 4 refineries we have so far have an installed capacity of 445,000 barrels per day.
Okay.
But as of May 2019, NMPC, which operates the 4 refineries, did say they were operating at 5.55% of the installed capacity. Now, the refineries, without a doubt, are very old. The technology is outdated. And there are so many issues with the refineries. Nigerians still do not understand. Turnaround maintenance has been done on all of them several times, and they're still where they are. So it's no surprise that there are no private investors willing to take on those refineries as they are. Now, this is also buttressed by the fact that Aliko Dangote, instead of choosing to buy any of the 4 refineries or all of them, elected to build a brand new refinery.
So why keep the old ones if they can't be revived? If the car is not, if you send a car to a mechanic and it tells you the engine has ended, that's kaput, according to how the local parlance, what would you do? You buy a new engine, right?
Yes.
So why do you think the federal government is reluctant, to buy to build new refineries, instead still pump money into revamping the old ones?
So, well, it would appear that in the past, turnaround maintenance was a source for getting easy money. Just go in, purport to do some maintenance, come out, and refinery is still the same way. Now, clearly, the federal government cannot invest money in refineries now, because the truth of the matter is money is hard in Nigeria, even for the government, and there are so many competing needs. Now, what is interesting in this story, and I encourage everyone to read the story. The DG of the BP comes out, says there's a list of 20 entities, but that he cannot state them because he's not been given clearance to. I don't understand. What does that mean?
And entities to be sold off this year.
Yes, and the refineries are not listed. And then also, the government had planned to sell its stake in most of the joint venture deals ventures with the IOCs. That's off the table. Now, why won't you list the assets to be sold? You already know the value of the assets, or you have a book value, but you cannot tell Nigerians why. And this is where Nigerians need to come in. Speak to your representatives in the National Assembly. You must know what is to be sold.
Perhaps they have identified the items to be sold. They're eligible to be auctioned off. Maybe they haven't completed the arrangements or agreements with intending investors.
No, Valentine, that's jumping the gun. At least tell us what is going to be. That it doesn't stop you from talking to the investors.
Right.
I want to sell your car, Valentine. To Ayo. It doesn't stop me from saying I want to sell Valentine's car. It will not prejudice whatever conversation you're going to have with Ayo.
You're right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, Henry on WhatsApp says, "Good morning, guys. Please, what is it with our government and committees for Pete's sake? Another committee to check security at the National Assembly?" Shaking my head. Well, Henry, just inform you, we have more committee stories coming up. Just prepare your mind. So don't get tired yet.
All right. Shegun says, Valentine, please wear a bit abada made of Guinea brocade. Wear a cap and approach the gates of the National Assembly. I guarantee that the doors will open for you to go in. Dami says,
"My concern on the National Assembly issue is why we think more force is the solution to all security issues. What you have are National Assembly members who are not disciplined enough to subject themselves and their constituents to simple security guidelines. A simple tap and go access card can solve this problem. Above all, the senators are insecure, they face insecurity more like just like majority of Nigerians." Thanks, Dami.
Thank you very much. New Telegraph has this report, Shore. Federal government gets 200,000 naira fine, files fresh charges. Now, the convener of the hashtag Revolution Now protest, Omole Shore, who was initially given a bill of 100 million and then reduced down to about 50 million, I think. He's been, well, it seems to be a little victory in a sense, but for a paltry sum of 200,000 naira. How do you think they achieved this? And Fumi, what are your thoughts regarding the entire story?
Okay, so his trial was supposed to start yesterday.
Yes.
And then the prosecution comes to say that they cannot start trial because they have just amended the charge. I think it was facing about, was it a 7-count charge before? And it's been amended to just 2-count charge. So they removed the allegations with respect to money laundering, cyber stalking, and reduced it to just treasonable felony that is trying to overthrow the government of President Buhari. So they come to say that, okay, we've just amended the charge and we've not even been able to serve him, give him a copy of the amended charge, and so we can't proceed with trial today. And both Showere's counsel is upset, and the judge as well is upset. You recall that this is somebody that was arrested in August 2019. That's a period of 7 months. And therefore, 7 months, is enough time for you to gather your evidence together, put your house in order to prosecute the case. The defense that the prosecuting counsel gives is that the office of the AGF has just taken over the case file in December, and therefore they had to review and all of that. But even that was not found to be a tenable excuse, because unfortunately for him, he was the same man that signed the initial charge. And so he was, and so while Showere's counsel applied that the entire charge be struck out because apparently they are not serious with prosecuting the case, the judge wanted to give them one more try to prosecute, but now imposed what we call cost for the delay. And this speaks a lot to our criminal justice system. Lengthy trial is one of the things that, one of the areas of, and one of the challenges we face in the justice system entirely, and particularly with respect to the criminal justice system. I know that the Administration of Criminal Justice Act that was passed in 2015, one of the core areas that it focused on was on how to ensure a more speedy dispensation of justice. And so they removed a lot of the logs that caused a lot of delay in criminal trials. And when you look at the rights of an accused person, having a criminal charge over your head for a lengthy period of time has its toll. No matter what the outcome will be, even if it's not something, and so it's something that the prosecution needs to work on, and it's something that the judiciary needs to stand its ground on and prevent as much as possible. So yes, this is a step in that direction.
Thank you, Fumi. Thank you very much. Let's take a few messages here on WhatsApp. Chooks from Lekki says Dangote actually bought one of the Northern Nigeria's refineries during Basinjo's privatization, but Yara reversed the sale. And Jerry.
And then Jerry's asking when the refinery will be ready. That we talk about it so often, and he's wondering when it will finally be
2022.
ready.
2022, right?
2022.
2022. All right, then Michael Onoja on YouTube says the prosecution has no case.
All right, sorry, I didn't care. The presidents went to pay solidarity, just commiserate with people in. Yeah, I don't know. He went to pay solidarity to those in Borno states, and including Maiduguri, actually to tell them that he's, as the president, he's empathetic to the plight of the people. So it seemed, but the people didn't believe him. They didn't think he meant what he said because there was a lot of booing and jeering.
Okay, so there's a video that we all, well, most of us, or quite a number of us may have seen online. I haven't personally confirmed the veracity, as concerned when, it originated. Short time to do that this morning. So, but the video showed hundreds of number of people, Premium Time says hundreds, on the road while the president's convoy drove back. And like you mentioned, he went to sympathize with the people of Borno State. This is because there was a recent incident involving Boko Haram terrorists that killed several travelers. And he was accompanied by the Defense Minister, National Security Advisor, and the governors of Imo and Cross River States, Hope Uzodinma and Ben Ayadi, and a few other federal government officials. And they were booing and they were saying, Buhari, we do not like you, we do not want you anymore. And for those who remember, Borno State actually did help, in the election results for Buhari. And it's a reflection of many things. If truly these people were not paid to do this, because you never can tell.
That was my first suspicion, to be honest.
But then again, that doesn't mean that a lot of people are not, displeased about his administration, at least in this second term. The question becomes, how does that translate in the head of the president? For someone that doesn't know him personally, I just feel the bad man, when they're done, they'll leave. But for the optics, it doesn't look good. Garba Shehu, of course, has put out a statement and has talked about the government's actions in fighting Boko Haram, and also said something about all those who say that Boko Haram is worse now. They've forgotten how many local governments, were under the control of Boko Haram before the Buhari administration, first, second term, and how somehow, it's a lot better now. He also made a statement about local authorities providing an avenue for the federal government to help continue to curb this. But on the long run, the good Buhari, it's in the news. It's part of politics,
And trust that the opposition will jump on this.
Oh yeah, they will. They would always jump on
release a statement.
Everybody will jump on it, even in the abroad. When Sanders falls, Donald Trump will jump on it and all of that. But, like I mentioned, the question is, how does it translate to the Buhari camp, and what does it mean to them?
And what sort of confidence does it invoke in the minds of people in the face of recent
For
attacks?
the average Nigerian who's listening, how does that really affect me? Because except, some act of God, or Buhari is removed, he has how many more years in that place? So, yeah.
But the fact that he visited alone is a good thing. It's not every day. I mean, before,
he shouldn't have visited.
We used to complain that the president does not speak.
It still doesn't mean that he's speaking. It still doesn't mean that this visit, cancels all the other visits that he should have done, or all the other statements that he personally should have released. Even when we receive messages or statements from the presidency, usually through the president of Garba Shehu, we don't have that space in Nigeria where the situation, that room, that was the name of that room in the White House,
The
where
Oval Office?
No, not the Oval, where the president, Obama was one person who used to do it so easily. The report correspondence are all gathered.
Yeah.
But we don't have that here. And the question is, I don't think that our leaders find a need to speak to us directly. And we talked about Buhari for so many, months about how he sees that. But
All right.
he visited, yada, yada, yada.
All right, thank you very much, Adenike. Let's move on to our next story very quickly, and I'll come to you for this, Mr. C. And that is that Silva, that's the Minister of State for Petroleum, Mr. Silva, federal government says that the federal government has discovered 1 billion barrels of oil in the northeast. This is from the New Telegraph. Please, can you take us through this story?
Okay, so the Minister of State was speaking to newsmen at the just concluded International Petroleum Summit, where he made this wonderful claim that 1 billion barrels of crude oil had been discovered in the Northeast. Now, for the benefit of people listening in the Northeast, the states that comprise the Northeast zone of Nigeria,
Yes.
Adamawa, Bauchi, Borno, Gombe, Taraba, Yobe. This is a zone that is plagued by insecurity. They're dealing with Boko Haram, ISWAP, and all the other terrorist groups. And it's in this region they discovered 1 billion. Fantastic. Now, we don't know. He did not give details as to who carried out the survey. He didn't tell us where in the Northeast this 1 billion barrels of crude oil can be found. All well and good. So
they've been prospecting for months now.
Yes. And to be fair to the Minister of State for Petroleum, if it's his office to give us information like that, we want to see, like we would say, show working. But it is also important for us to take his announcement.
What I'll tell Nigerians is book back this story. Let's go 12 months and see if anything follows the story. He then goes on to say that they are planning to rehabilitate the refineries and that the Port Harcourt refinery maintenance should start first quarter of this year.
Yes.
Good. We've been doing that over a number of years and we haven't gotten the results. And it's simple logic that if you continue to do the same thing without getting the results, then you have to change what you're doing.
Yes.
Gloria sent a message on WhatsApp. She said, we are currently drilling in Gombe, so it's not untrue.
Now, I wanted to actually focus on that, Mr. C. Let me ask you a question. I was reading an article and I saw a headline recently that many countries around the world, Western powers, are moving away from the use of petrol and we are still discovering more oil. Should we be realistic and start thinking about the fact that we need to look for alternative sources of income and not depend on oil, because we have countries like in Europe, we have countries in Asia who are moving away from using fuel, oil, and cars that would use diesel and petrol, and we're still discovering oil and excited about that.
Okay, so the countries you've referred to, all of them have stable power. So you've left that argument a long time ago. We don't have stable powers. That's why they're moving to electric cars. They're moving to cleaner environments.
Well, I'm asking, who are we going to export to? That's what I'm wondering.
Okay, so it's a very good question, and it's interesting because if we don't put our acts in order now, when we get to that point in time, we'll be lost.
Yes.
And I was asked a very good question. I don't have the answer. I don't know who we'll be selling to. And this is when you would expect our lawmakers, our policy makers to put on their thinking caps and draw up a plan.
Yes.
You know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see more mining capacity for Nigeria so that we stop exporting crude to import petrol. So we can do it all in-house and then ramp up our income from honestly.
It still asks the question, who are we going? Because we're still going to say we can't consume all the production. We can't. So what I'm just trying to point out here is that this is good news to celebrate as a headline, but we need to also start looking long term and having a sustainable plan for when people start moving away from using petrol. All right, let's move on to the next story very quickly. Thanks a lot, Mr. C. Fumi, I'll come to you for this. The Federal Executive Council approves 318 million naira contract for NDDC forensic audit. Please take us through the story from The Guardian.
So this is, I think, a continuing issue. The NDDC has been in the news in recent times over allegations of misappropriation of funds and all of that. So this is a continuation to that. So the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs has communicated that the FEC has approved a contract worth 318 million naira to the lead for engaging a lead consultant to carry out a forensic audit of the Niger Delta Development Commission. The lead consultant is Olumuyiwa Bashir and Co. Limited.
Yeah.
The there have been complaints by the 9 governors of the Niger Delta region, Niger Delta states, regarding the operations of the NDDC. And so this is a step by the federal government in order to be able to do this. The minister is optimistic that they'll be able to recover a lot of money from this exercise. The story further goes on to mention some of the contracts that have also been awarded by FEC.
Yeah.
The Minister of State for Transport, Senator Gbemisola Saraki, said that the FEC has approved a contract worth 1.48 billion naira for the purchase of equipment for ship berthing safety at the port. Another contract worth 556 million naira for the extension of consultancy services in respect of rehabilitation of Tinkan Island Port in Lagos. The Minister of Works and Housing disclosed that there has been a contract of engineering design in relation to the Abuja-Kano Road,
Yes.
worth 872 million naira. The Minister of Health informed us that the federal government has acquired the necessary testing regions and laboratories in Abuja, Lagos, and Edo State to check possible spread of deadly coronavirus. So yes, the story gives us a bit of information about what the federal government is doing with the allocations, as to, especially with respect to all this consultancy matters, as to the value of the contracts. Right. Unfortunately, I don't know why our Mr. Businessman is not here today. No, it's I usually restrain a bit when I'm putting value to services.
Same here.
So
when I saw the amount, I was a bit like
for consultancy, for review, for audits,
to audit.
Maybe. But then
finance people out there listening to us, do you think 318 million naira is a fair amount to award for contracts?
Honestly, I feel it is, because if you look at NDDC as a whole, you know that there are a lot of agencies under it, that it has oversight functions over. I mean, you see that their functions it's not as if it's just one single agency, so it spreads across a lot of them, and these are independent consultants, not.
Yeah, and so it's a comprehensive audit. Yes. As somebody in services industry, you can't tell someone how to place value on their services, and so it's
Besides,
tricky.
What's the value of a naira?
It's tricky.
Let's go on to this one that made the headlines earlier this week, and now the presidency has come out with a statement on this. And Mr. C, I'll come to you for that. And that's that the presidency has stated that Zahra Buhari didn't get the PPPRA job. That's the Petroleum Products Pricing Regulatory Agency job. An earlier report this week had claimed that Zahra secured a job as a deputy manager in the Petroleum Agency, and a number of people questioned her qualifications to attain that position, and the fact that it was nepotism. They've come out with a statement. Please take us through this quickly.
Okay, so earlier this week, Zahra Buhari was alleged to have gotten a job with a PPRA.
Yes.
Now, the presidency has come out in a formal statement, and denied it, saying that she wasn't engaged by the said agency, but that in any event, Zahra Buhari is qualified as a Nigerian to be employed by the agency. Sure. I agree with that statement. If she has the requisite qualifications, that is degrees and experience, why not be employed?
All right, thank you very much for that. I think what was questioned was the position. It wasn't that she could get employment anywhere. She's Nigerian, but deputy manager, people thought that was a bit too much for her qualifications.
Well, it depends on your skill set and what you're bringing to the table. So,
all right. Well, they've come out to say the publication is untrue. It's malicious and meant to cast aspersions on the first family. So they say it's untrue.
Timothy said the need for oil is not only in the automobile industry, but aviation, marine, and also the winter season. The earlier we discover the oil and sell it off, the better, before it becomes invaluable or not valuable. Prince says petrol is not the only thing gotten from crude oil. Over 27 byproducts exist. Crude oil will never be replaced. Even the cars that are using electricity are made from petroleum products.
Thank you. All right. We have from JP, that's where we have ERPs in in a global village.
Mm.
Najasha, as for PMB Bonu trip, too little, too late, in my opinion.
All right. And Emeka Onelum says, after spending such an amount of money for forensic audits, that audit had better be worth it. If not, heads will roll.
we promise, well, as much as possible, as long as they make it public, to review the findings of that audit. And then Chineye on YouTube says crude oil is used for much more than petrol. There'll always be a market for its products. Well, that's good news for us, but please let us still consider long-term sustainability plans to diversify the economy. We celebrate the fact that we're finding oil every day, but we must also not make that make us relent in terms of looking for alternative sources of income. All right, Lagos, that's all we can take this morning. A big thanks to you for your comments and your contributions to the conversation. A big appreciation to our analysts this morning. Adenike Oyetunde, Fumi Odide at Fumi Odide, and Mr. C at D Mr. C on Twitter. You can find us on Twitter at Smooth981FM and kindly use the hashtag FreshlyPress981 to continue the conversation online. In the meantime, we'll go on a break. When we come back, it'll be time for us to take you through some major stories in entertainment as well as review new songs in the Grapevine 981. Stay tuned.
When did you take the Meko story?
Oh, there was no time.
From credit.